basically do them just like we did on the warm-ups. You're going to have to solve a quadratic equation. So let's look at a couple of these. Let's look at 3. We're obviously not going to do all of these. I'm just going to do a couple of each type. So if I look at 3, given the diagram below, find the dimensions of the rectangle if the area is 128 square feet. So first of all, with story problems, you want to read and see what they are looking for. As I read number 3, what are they asking for? Find the dimensions. When I refer to the dimensions of a rectangle, I want the what and the what? Length and the width. So make sure you are answering the question. So by the end, I am finished when I have the length equals this and the width equals this. Okay? So they don't give me much information. The only information they give me about this rectangle is what? The area is 128 feet. And if I look at the picture, they also give me the length is x plus 7 and the width is x minus 1. So they give me representations of the length and width. But if I want the dimensions, I want actual numbers for the length and the width. Okay? So let's think about this. If I give you the area of the rectangle, what's the area formula for the area of the rectangle? Area is what? Length times width. So use that, which you've done since middle school. They tell you the area is what? So we're going to put that where the area is. So 128, which is the area, is equal to the length. Well, what represents the length? X plus 7. It doesn't really matter which one you represent with the length and width. So let's say the length is x plus 7. My width is x minus 1. Now I have my equation. So you're just looking at what the information they give you, basically plugging it in, and now we have an equation. Okay, now let's use common sense. If I look at this, your first thought would be what? Do what? No, say it again. Say it. I want to solve this for x. Distribute, what is it going to be called? Foiling. We're going to FOIL the right side. Use common sense. We have foiled a ton in this class. So if I FOIL the right side, we're going to have what? First thing will be what? X squared. X times x. X squared. The outside 2 will give me what? Negative 1x or negative x. Inside 2 will give me what? And then the last 2 will give me negative 7. You know how to FOIL. So I understand, I get that word problems are kind of confusing, but just kind of use. If it's a binomial times a binomial, well, common sense would say let's try to FOIL that. Okay, as I look at my right side, how can I simplify the right side? What things can I put together? Yep, what's negative x plus 7x? 6x minus 7. Now I have this. I need to solve this for x. I notice, what type of equation do I have? Quadratic. I see x squared. This is quadratic. You're going to get quadratic equations today on the story problems. So if I have a quadratic equation, I need to figure out how to solve it. What are kind of the 3 basic options I have to solve it?
Wait.
Yes?
Why don't you just... Don't you have to add 128?
We will, but let's decide how to solve it first, and then we'll deal with that. So, square root, can I do the square root method? No, because of y?
Yeah.
The 6x. So I cannot do square root because I have the 6x. So I move on and I say, let's see if I can factor this. So like Austin was saying, to factor it has to be set equal to 0. So how do I get this equal to 0? Subtract 128. So once you get it set up, it's stuff you've done before. It's just kind of getting the story problem set up. So 0 equals x squared plus 6x, and what is negative 7 minus 128? Negative 135. Okay? Now, could you use the quadratic for every single quadratic formula for every single one of these? You could. Factoring is going to be a lot quicker and a lot easier, and you're going to have less room for mistake. So set equal to 0. Let's try to factor the right side. It is a trinomial with a 1 in front. So how can I start with the shortcut? 2 parentheses with x's in front. I need to try to find 2 numbers that multiply to give me negative 135 and add to give me 6. So we're going to put that to the side. They need to multiply to give me negative 135 and add to give me positive 6. Now let's think about the sign. If they multiply to give me a negative, I know the signs are going to be one positive, one negative, but if they add to give me a positive, the bigger number will be positive. Now 135 I don't know super well, but just start plugging it in your calculator. 135, it ends in a 5, so we're going to guess a what to start with? 5. Let's try 5. Will negative 5 and 27 give you 6? No. So if it ends in a 5, the next one to try will probably be a 15. 15 and a 9. Well, if the bigger one is positive, does a positive 15 and a negative 9 give you 6? Yes. So those are my two numbers. So x plus 15, x minus 9. So you could use quadratic formula, but factoring is a lot faster. Okay. Thanks, Kaden. I'm glad I don't have ears to hear. I'm glad you're explaining that to me. Okay, so have I solved this yet? No. How do I solve this? Set them both equal to 0. This is all stuff you've done before. Set them both equal to 0. Solve each one. So one answer will be x equals what? One answer will be x equals 9. Now let's think about which one makes sense. I am talking about a length. So if I want to find the length and the width, I know x, I need to know the length and the width. So how do I find the actual length and width? Try to plug them in. If x is negative 15, what's negative 15 plus 7? What's negative 15 plus 7? Can I have a negative length? No. So negative 15 will not work. So you need to check when you plug them in, if you get back negative length or negative width, it doesn't work. Let's plug in 9. 9 plus 7? 16. The width, 9 minus 1? 8. And these are in feet, so just put feet behind it. So I know these are complicated, but you have seen them before. Once you set it up, it's the same idea.
So you just use one of those to find both?
Yeah, one of them is going to give you negative length and widths. So you'll have to figure out which one to use by just plugging it in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's look at the next one. Okay, let's look at 6 real quick. Same idea. The length of a rectangle is 6 meters less than its width. Find the dimensions of the rectangle if it is if the area is 27 square meters. Okay, I again want the dimensions. So I want the length and the width. I'm talking about a rectangle. What's the area formula for rectangle? Length times width again. Okay, let's see. It tells me the length of a rectangle is 6 less than its width. So the length of a rectangle is, so L equals, how would I represent 6 less than the width? So the length is, L equals, 6 less than the width. 6 less than the width. W minus 6. We'll just use L and W, it doesn't matter. Okay. Find the dimensions of the rectangle if its area is 27 square meters. So where can I put 27 in for? A, because that's your area. I know the length is what? So I can put W minus 6 in, and then I have times the W. Okay, you have this. Kind of use common sense. What do you think we would do first? Distribute the W. Even though it's at the end, we're still multiplying, so we can distribute it. So I will have 27 equals W squared minus 6W. This is quadratic because I have W squared. So let's, can I do square root? No, because of the 6W. So I need to get this equal to 0. How would I get this equal to 0? Minus 27. So 0 equals w squared minus 6w minus 27. Now you could use the quadratic formula if you're like, I love it so much, let's do it. It will work, but we can also try to factor. I have a trinomial with a 1 in front, so how can I start the shortcut? 2 parentheses, what goes in front? W. I need to find two numbers that multiply to give me what? Negative 27, and add to give me negative 6. So there are two numbers that multiply to give me negative 27 and add to give me negative 6. Negative 9 and positive 3. Okay. Is this solved yet? Nope. So take each part, set it equal to 0. One will be w equals what? 9. And 1 will be w equals negative 3. Well, let's think about this. W represents the width. Can I have a negative width? No. So I can't have a negative 3. So my width is 9 meters. I want both dimensions. If I know my width is 9 meters, how do I find the length? I know my width is 9. How do I find the length? 9 minus 6. Plug it in, which is 3. So my width is 9 meters, or 3 meters, and the width is 9 meters. So length is 3 meters, width is 9 meters. Okay. Any questions on that? The units you said? No, I'm not going to be super. Technically you should, but I'm not. If you can do all the math, I'm not going to take off. Okay, we're going to look at one more example. So let's flip it over to the next page. Okay. Okay, let's look at 2. Okay, an apple is launched directly upward at 64 feet per second from a platform 80 feet high. The equation for this apple's height, h, at time t seconds after launch is h equals negative 16t squared plus 64t plus 80. They give you the quadratic equation, or a quadratic equation. They give it to you. Okay. I'm not going to have you worry about part A, finding the maximum height. Don't worry about that, and I'll take those off the homework. What I want you to worry about is I want to know how many seconds will it take for the apple to reach the ground. Let's think about this. T is time, h is height. So if I want to know how many seconds, I really want to know the what? If I want to know how many seconds, do I want to know the height or the time? Time. I want to solve for t. Think about it. If I want to know how many seconds, I want to know the time. I want to know t. So I'm going to take this equation and I want to solve for t. Well, what do they tell me about the height? I want to know how many seconds it will take for the apple to reach the ground. What will the height be if the apple reaches the ground? If I throw an apple up and it comes back down, what will the height be when it hits the ground? 0. So if I want to know how long, I want to know t when my height is 0. So if I put 0 where h is, so I'm just putting 0 where h is, and I say, well, I want to find time, t, when h is 0. Okay, so let's try to solve this. Try to factor it if you can. We can also do the quadratic formula if you want to. How do we want to solve this? We could try a factor. Let's try quadratic formula because we can. It doesn't matter. If I try quadratic formula, let's just practice quadratic formula. If I try to quadratic formula, t equals negative b, so that's negative 64 plus or minus the square root of b squared, 64 squared, minus 4 times negative 16 times 80, all over 2 times negative 16. So plug it in like we did yesterday. We're not going to do the other examples on this page, so use whatever space you need to. Okay, let's simplify. Negative 64 plus or minus, you would have to use a calculator. 64 squared? 4,096. Who cares? It's big numbers. Great. Thank God he created calculators. Negative 4 times negative 16. You're good. You're good. Negative 4 times negative 16. 64 times 80. 5,120. Okay. Over negative 32. I get their big numbers. You're fine. Okay, almost as scary as this thunder. Negative 64 plus or minus. Let's add 4,096 plus 5,120. 9,216. Or negative 32. Okay, well, let's see if I can take the square root. What is the square root of 9,216? So negative 64 plus or minus, well, I took the square root, so that square root is gone. It is 96. It comes out even. Over negative 32. Get your two answers. Negative 64 plus 96, and then divide by negative 32. So what's negative 64 plus 96? Okay, what is it? 32 divided by negative 32. Negative 1. And then your other answer comes from negative 64 minus 96 divided by 32. What's negative 64 minus 96? Negative 160 divided by 32. Negative, or 5. That's a negative 32. Sorry, I forgot the negative. Negative 32. Positive 5. Now, with these story problems, look and see. One of them will probably not make sense. Let's see. Okay, which one will not make sense?
Negative.
Negative. I cannot have a negative time. These represent time. I cannot have a negative time. So your answer is 5 what? Seconds. So always look at your answers and see which one does not make sense. Yeah, we're not doing a time. Okay, so get your homework packet out. I'm going to take off a couple of them. So get out your homework packet. We're looking at the quadratic word problems. Okay. So as I look at this one, okay, these are the ones I want you to cross off. So go through. We're looking at this page. Let's answer.
Get the answers on there.
Okay, so as I look, I'm going to take some off. Okay, so as you look at your homework packet for Unit 5, I am taking off. We're looking at the third page. Okay, I am taking off on number 5, the maximum height one, so to cross off 5A.
Are we still doing them 5?
You're doing 5B, just like the notes. Yeah. So cross off 5A. Cross off 6A. Cross off 7A. And cross off the entire number 8. So I know they're story problems. That's why I did not give you a ton of them because they take a while. Okay, so cross off 5a, 6a, 7a, and then the entire number 8. Yep, just a second. So the rest of the time, I would work on these. If you still need to finish from from yesterday's homework, you might have to do some of it at home, which is not the end of the world. If you need to finish yesterday's homework, I would work on these first, because you probably already have some of yesterday's homework done, so you probably understand it decently well. And if you need to finish it later, you
can, but I would get started on the story problems, because those are probably going to be trickier than yesterday's assignment.